Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About It Tuesday. I'm Georgette. I am the mom,
And I'm TJ, I'm the son.
and we both study and work in the field of psychology, and we are passionate about sharing what we know with you so that you can live your best life.
Boom.
And today we're going to talk about meditation.
Ooh, I love meditation. Keep talking.
Meditation is a self-induced, altered state of consciousness.
Damn, that's freaking deep.
It is a practice in which intense, focus on that word, intense contemplation leads to a deep sense of calmness.
Attention, the hyper focus of your attention to something very, very minute, breathing, body sensations, more internal, allowing you to increase the likelihood of you being mindful in the moment, where, as we've talked about in previous modules or videos, is that anxiety and depression, they can only, live in the future and in the past, not in the present moment.
The most profound interaction you have during meditation is interaction with yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
And so what can happen is you can find emotions emerging that you weren't prepared for sometimes.
Yeah, because we talk about when you're bombarded by so much stimuli, it affects a lot of those 50 to 70,000 thoughts. The more that you can get into a meditative state, the much greater likelihood you have of identifying a little bit more clear thoughts, the much better likelihood you will have of becoming more relaxed and being more open and receptive to the fact that you are safe, you are in control, and all these other things that we talk about.
The first time I did float therapy in a sensory deprivation tank, they warned me about being completely alone with myself. They said some people have trouble with it. And knowing I was an overthinker, I opted for the rhythmic music the first time so that I did have that in the background.
Yeah, well, being by yourself, I mean, like, that's the hardest thing to do. And not only that, but when in a lot of the psychotherapies that we do, the number one complaining one is meditation. Because it's extremely hard to try to constantly calm your mind down and being just alone with your thoughts, which also speaks to some negative core beliefs and, some other things that we can get into a little bit later. But it's, once again, the more that you can get into that meditative state, right, regardless of, how you do it, right, the much better likelihood you're going to have of staying in control.
Right. It takes practice.
Extensive practice.
And you get better at it with practice. And so that is probably one of the things that makes it hard, is sticking with it long enough to reap those benefits.
The hardest thing for all of us, a little discomfort and the natural tendency to want to cower, fight, flight, freeze, want to get away from any sort of the uncomfortableness. But when you are uncomfortable, that's even more of a reason to partake in diaphragmatic breathing and or meditation, right? And when you're saying, man, this is not going well for me today, that is that beautiful opportunity for growth that you can only do by yourself. So where the original thought process was, if your mind is not completely blank, it's a complete waste of your time. In order for you to get there, you can focus on the diaphragmatic breathing, once again, as conscious as the only thing that matters, like your heart rate and once again, your breath and your heart rate are the only two things vital to you in that moment. The more that you can get that going and flowing, the more likely that you are going to be able to dim down that limbic system and get more prefrontal cortex activation. So for the first time, allowing more thoughts to speak a lot louder than the negative and unhelpful emotions that we have in our life.
Right. There are different types of meditation. There's something called guided meditation, where you use like guided imagery or visualization. With this method of meditation, you form mental images of places or situations that you find relaxing. The key is to use as many of your senses as possible: sight, smell, sounds, and usually it's led by a guide or a teacher.
Yeah. So think about, how does your feet feel in that sand if you're on the beach? Mm-hmm. How does the water feel like spraying on your face? How does the sun feel beating down on you? How does, what are some things that you tasted or that you can taste, the smells coming from the beach? The more that you can bring attention to that, the more likelihood you're going to be able to recreate that, because the brain has a hard time differentiating whether it's imagining something or experiencing something. So the more that you try to do that, although it may be hard, and although there's a stigma that comes along with meditation, the more that you practice, the more that you'll be able to get into a meditative state no matter what is going on around you, focusing on those things in any moment, right?
As you were talking about that, I thought about that ride at Disneyland, Soaring, California. I find that very relaxing, very relaxing. But the thing that sticks out most to me is when you're flying over the orchards and
the water.
The water, but also the smell of the citrus.
Yeah.
That just gets me every time. Like,
it.
I feel like I'm on that ride now, just because that's just so powerful. Concentrative meditation, that's when you focus on something specific, like a mantra or an object. Mindfulness meditations, when you let your mind just go, you know, you try to stop your thought flows without reacting. Sometimes when I walk, I come up with insights and ideas that I didn't, because I realize I'm not thinking about anything.
Yeah.
And so that frees my mind for new ideas, new thoughts that I haven't had before.
The more meditation that you can get in, the more you're going to have just kind of your own thoughts shine through, as opposed to shots that are triggered by some unhelpful emotions that we are unhelpful stimuli that surround us.
Right. And then there's something called transcendental meditation, which is when you do concentrative meditation for 20 minutes twice a day. So it's more structured. So the effects of meditation, short term, you have a relaxation, like you'll experience what I did with Insight. Long term, there's been some evidence showing that you'll get health benefits because of the biological changes produced.
Yeah. So in that moment, the short term, when you partake in, so when we talk about meditation, I talk a lot about diaphragmatic breathing, which is the simple act of, oh, I might as well stand up for this, right? So, oh, and I got a good belly for this too. So the whole idea is obviously inhaling, exhaling through the nostrils, trying to do your best to keep your chest as still as you possibly can, and just trying to allow the belly button to be pushed as far away from the spine as you can by forcing and pushing that air down into the belly. So as I inhale, and a lot of people can't even do this where they keep the chest still and they allow it to get into their diaphragm. And what that does is automatically, what do we tend to do when we get stressed out? We breathe in our chest. And that already adds an external factor that makes it a lot harder for the heart to feel as safe and controlled as possible. So as you constantly focus in on that, first off, turning off the limbic system and allowing more utilization of your prefrontal cortex, the more you focus on the breathing and the stillness of the chest, the more that heart rate is going to be more steady, more consistent, which normally doesn't happen when we're stressed out and anxious. And then it's like a domino effect. Your blood vessels become relaxed and put itself into what we call rest and digest. So instead of your body constantly trying to push blood flow in order to have you run away or fight, flight, or freeze, what have you, you're creating more of the likelihood of you resting the muscle. So your body will actually feel a lot better. Your nerves will dim down receptors because you're getting more relaxed. Your digestive system normally depletes itself of blood when you're getting stressed out or anxious because it wants to help with the heart or with the brain. And if anyone's ever had constipation and diarrhea, I'm sure we can all attest to the fact that doesn't quite help with your mental health. And also we produce a lot of dopamine and serotonin, which are two of the pleasurable chemicals that we release in our body. And even deep within your vital organs, your liver and your kidneys don't know what the heck is going on around you. It doesn't have eyes. It relies solely based on the electrical impulses being sent from the brain down into that area. So the more that you can partake in the diaphragmatic breathing, you're letting the liver do waste management as opposed to go, 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 go. You're allowing the kidneys to stop releasing unhelpful or stress hormones. Like epinephrine, not to be confused with norepinephrine, which is a positive one. So you're dimming that down. And last but not least, when you're stressed out and anxious, you're getting more of that blood flow and activation in your limbic system. Once again, relying on short-term and long-term thoughts that you've been established throughout the entirety of your life, already preset. Emotional, which is just getting worse and worse and worse depending on how you're reacting to respond to it. And then once again, behaviorally, your body wants to fight, flight, or freeze and and sometimes we're in that fight, flight, or freeze state that we get into what we call monkey brain or dinosaur brain or primitive brain, whatever you want to call it. But when you're running away from a dinosaur, you're not going to think about your goals and what you want to accomplish and how happy that you can because you're just trying to get the hell away. So sometimes you're just trying to get the hell away from your life. So this diaphragmatic breathing in the short term makes you feel as safe as possible. And the more that you can feel safe from a physiological standpoint, your brain will believe you, you'll become more open and receptive, and that will help. And in the long term, it literally has shown that it changes gray matter activity in all different areas of the brain. You can teach control. You can do all these things. Meditation, it has a stigma attached to it, and it needs to stop because you need to do it. You need to. Or find something that is a meditative practice for you.
Exactly. We're going to talk about some features that you can solely incorporate because of that stigma. I hate that stigma. It drives me insane. I have so many students where I'll say, okay, let's try some guided meditation. And I play one and I can see that some of them, they're like nervous about it. I'm like, they think they're being brainwashed. That's a whole nother topic, right?
Yeah, they think it's like crossing their legs, humming and floating above the ground.
Yeah.
But it's different. It's not that.
Right. There are emotional benefits of meditation. You can gain a new perspective on stressful situations. You're building skills to manage stress. You're increasing your self-awareness, focusing on the present, that mindfulness that we talk about all the time. We talk about that. Reducing negative emotions, increasing imagination and creativity, and increasing patience and tolerance.
Yeah. And all those things are just so impactful. And it's just, and once again, it just gets brushed off the shoulder because and we did Maslow's hierarchy of needs or our needs in the earlier video. But we try to get to these, these self-actualization, self-esteem, these goals, all these big things, but we forget about the baseline, right? You forget about the foundation, right? Which is things like water, breathing, and all these other things. So if you're not taking care of this strong foundation, you are going to collapse very, very easily. And some of you are experiencing it currently.
Right. There are many meditation techniques. You have to find the one that's right for you. If you try one and you don't like it, move on to the next. Some people find it very hard to meditate, very hard to quiet their brain. A key thing is to not go in with expectations.
The key is to not get upset with yourself when you can't keep your mind blank. Once again, when you focus on the breathing, the simple thing that you were repeating is science says the more that I do this, the more likely I will be able to turn this off. But you cannot if you're so closed off and upset about the fact that it's happening. So don't focus on the clearness of the mind because you're going to drive yourself crazy. Focus on the breathing. Counting in, counting out. We talked about meditation that work for you. For me, it's just listening to any music. It can be hard rock. And it's just focusing on your breathing and changing up these sequences. Inhaling for 10 seconds, exhaling for 1 second. That's a technique utilized to, it's almost like supposed to kickstart your energy, right? And then there's the box method. 4 in, hold for 4. 4 out, hold for 4. What they teach for Navy SEALs that helps with stress. And then there's some where you try to speed it up. You try to slow it down. So it's just me consciously giving myself a new thing to focus on without any hearing whatso from anybody. Right. So it's just finding what works for you and realizing that that diaphragmatic breath can be done during, like I said, art therapy, journaling, praying, any other, and we'll probably talk about more as well, but anything can be made meditative with the breathing. But also keep in mind that you have to find something that is meditative because we think that happiness is what we want to get to, but you really want that peace and content, that serenity, because when you get that, you can kind of pick and choose a lot more easily the thoughts that will lead to better emotions, that will lead to better behaviors.
So I mentioned earlier I did float therapy. And the first time I did it, I experienced what I believe is a lucid dream, which I had never experienced before. And I thought it was very cool. And so the second time I went in, I really wanted to experience that again, knowing what I had experienced. I wanted to experience again. But the fact that I went in with expectations and was trying to get into that state so hard, I wasn't clearing my mind. I was busying my mind. So it actually prevented me from having that lucid dream the second time.
You're busying your mind by telling it to relax.
Like I was so focused. Yeah, it was like this vicious cycle. Some common features of meditation include focused attention, relaxed breathing, a quiet setting, a comfortable position, and an open attitude. And like TJ said, if you have those features, you're meditating. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It's meditative if you have those features all happening. But we're going to give you some techniques that you could try to see which ones that you're comfortable with. It looked like you wanted to say something.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Keep rolling with it.
So breathing deeply, that's one thing that you can start with. It's very good for beginning because let's face it, breathing is something we naturally do, right?
We naturally do incorrectly.
Oh, yes.
Breathe into our chest. We don't necessarily want that.
Right. Scanning your body. So with this technique, you focus attention on different parts of your body. You become aware of your body's various sensations, whether it's pain, tension, warmth, or relaxation. I used to do this unknowingly. I didn't realize it was meditation at the time, but I used to suffer from migraines when I was younger. And I used to do a body scan as I was trying to get myself into a relaxed state.
Yeah, with the breathe deeply one, we kind of talked about the diaphragmatic breathing, and the more that you can focus in on once again counting seconds, it's kind of like we talked about with art therapy, where the more you try to focus on just drawing inside the line, you have to be utilizing more prefrontal cortex activation compared to your limbic system. So can you go back up, please?
Oh, sorry.
So the more that you do the breathing, I kind of messed up my train of thought. What was I talking about? Keep going. What was I talking about?
I don't know. I got messed up too.
Okay. So once again, the more that you do the counting, right, that gives you another thing to focus on. So it sounds simple or mundane, but think about if you're sitting there thinking, this is stupid, that is most likely an automatic thought coming from the emotional part of your brain. So you're going to keep hearing that this is stupid, but we're telling you all the reasons why it's not. And you can argue with this all you want, but it's more emotional reasoning that is not accurate. So once again, the focusing on the breathing is one thing to help. Scanning the body, simple things that as you do the diaphragmatic breathing, you're already dimming down the sensitivity of your nervous system. You just bringing attention to different parts of your body, you will increase the safety. You'll increase the safety signals being sent throughout the entirety of your body. So simple things like making sure, just breathing, just making sure each one of your little toes is falling into the ground. I'm thinking about it right now. Making sure my ankles are nice and soft, not contracting. My calves are just melting down into the floor. My knees aren't tense. My thighs are falling into the floor. My glutes are pancaking down. My hips are soft. my back is nice and relaxed, falling into the back of the chair. Now, obviously, I'm speeding up the process, but little things like that, scanning the body. Once again, the more it's like from the movie Patriot, aim small, miss small. The more that you focus your attention on little parts of your body, you will be amazed at how much you dim down some of those unhelpful emotions.
You can actually imagine breathing heat or relaxation into and out of different parts of your body, because when you focus on them, like I have this one guided meditation that I do where it tells you to focus on your hand, and as soon as you do that, you start thinking about your hand, and your hand actually gets warm. You know, it's fascinating. Combining those two are so powerful.
Because when you bring that effort, what happens? It goes in the forefront of your mind, so your body starts going to that area because it says that this is something that needs to be worked on.
Yeah, it's very cool. Very cool. Repeating a mantra, that is something that you could do if you wanted. You could start there if that's what you're comfortable with. It can be religious or secular. Examples of religious mantras include the Jesus prayer in the Christian tradition, the holy name of God in Judaism, and the mantra of Hinduism. So those are some things that you could focus on, like
positive core beliefs. I am strong. I am able.
Affirmations,
and normally when I bring that up, 75% of the room in the group, the group in the room doesn't matter, roll their eyes, right? Once again, that is a defense mechanism. Can you imagine the brain and body immediately rejecting all those positive things because of how crappy that you do maybe feel about yourself? Right? So introducing some of these better thoughts in the moment, because oftentimes it's that lack of open receptiveness that you're not open to the positive affirmations. You're not open to the alternative thought patterns. You're not open to the fact that for a lot of this, and no matter what has happened to you, good or bad, a lot of it is still a choice. And meditation makes that choice a heck of a lot easier. Introducing new thought patterns, introducing and practicing, because practice makes permanent. You're not practicing for the situation. You're just thinking that it's going to be good on its own.
Right. Walking and meditating, 2 ways. That's another way you can start with your meditation. When you do that, they recommend that you focus not on the destination, but on the process of walking, lifting your feet, lifting your legs.
It wasn't until I started meditating that I found myself just walking around for a couple hours, just listening to birds. And I was like, there's no way a couple months ago that I would have been neurologically stimulated by just listening to birds and being mindful in that moment. And I blinked. I was like, oh my gosh, it's been 2 hours, because it is a skill that you have to develop.
Engage in prayer. Prayer is actually the best known and most widely practiced example of meditation.
Boom goes the dynamite.
Let's see. You can read and reflect.
Write down everything, then reread it, then breathe through it. Introducing, this is where it's almost like grading yourself. It's almost like you're writing it all down. That is your rough draft, and now you change it to what you want to hear, that annoyingly rational, that annoyingly positive, or whatever that you can focus in on. That will allow yourself to relax. That will be open to some of these new things that you're practicing.
Right. Reading inspirational quotes, poems, sacred texts, listening to music, that can be very relaxing and inspiring. And then writing those down in your journal and discussing them with a friend.
Writing down little things like, what have you accomplished throughout your life? What are some smaller, big challenges that you've overcome? What do you learn? Right. And then the next one, I'm going to skip the line and beat you to it. Focus your love and gratitude. Why do gratitude lists get brought up so often? Because your brain does not instinctually look for the gratitude that is around it. Your brain is trying to constantly look for the possible danger in order to protect you. The more that you focus on the gratitude, and once again, at the beginning, you're like, I don't necessarily feel like any of this is true. Yeah, those are the feelings that are stopping you. The more that you do it, the more that you will create it. Simple things. I'm grateful for, always look, every time you enter a new room, what are 10 things that you're grateful for? And it doesn't matter how silly or mundane that they seem. Very grateful for frames in order for them to make the pictures and memories that I've been through so much happier, right? I'm grateful for a microphone that helped fix a lot of the issues that we're facing early on in our podcast. I'm grateful for the air. And then it gets to a point where it's become so much easier. My theory, what I do as far as gratitude lists is I just start writing and I just keep going. Some people say list 5 things. Some people say this. I just say one thing and then the next thing pops in. And the next thing pops in, and the next thing pops in. And it becomes, once again, something that if it's doing that as I'm writing about it, imagine in the real world, in little things, how much easier I may latch on to the gratitude, because more than we are instinctually negative, we are habitual. and you are changing the habits so that you can pull yourself further and further away from that brain negativity bias.
I read
And meditation is a big part.
I read something the other day about suffering and why we like to suffer. And a couple of things struck out at me is one, it makes us unique.
Yeah, it makes us unique. It gives us that egotistical, like that affirmation or that reinforcement, right? And it is just more familiar. It connects a little bit easier on all elements of our body,
And
unfortunately.
it requires other people to respond to us. So like if
Attention.
you told me you were unhappy, I would feel like doing something about it. If you told me happy, I'd be like, oh, great. And I'd move on.
You move on, nothing.
Being suffering and being unhappy causes people to react to you.
And a lot of people,
why we do it's reinforced.
And a lot of people don't realize until they start meditating, but a lot of you are in bad moods because you are choosing to be. You're not choosing to get better. And keep in mind that it may be because, once again, and this is just a natural byproduct of being a human, you're not crazy, but sometimes we lose sight on the fact that we are instinctually wired to look at that type of stuff, and it is up to us to constantly practice it, because if you don't do it with meditation, that will once again dim down your emotional response, because it's going to make you more open and receptive, and dim down that sensitivity of your nervous system that bombards you with information when you're stressed out and anxious. So it's a choice.
And we hope you make the choice. Yeah, we really do. We talk about meditation in almost every podcast as a strategy to resolve whatever issue you have. I mean, it comes up a lot. It comes up a lot for a reason. So we encourage you this week to take a look at some of the options: breathing deeply, scanning your body, repeating a mantra, walking, engaging in prayer, reading, reflecting, and focusing on love and gratitude. Incorporate one or two of those this week, and I will guarantee you will feel better at the end of the week.
And keep in mind, meditation doesn't have to be an hour long. It could be 2 minutes before that interview. It could be during the interview. It could be after, when it's done. It could be in the morning, knowing that when you wake up with that alarm clock, you're most likely going to wake up in a sympathetic response, because, very animalistic, coming right out of bed and right before you go to sleep in order to help with you getting into sleep. Because the more calm, cool, and collected we can get your neurological system going into bed, the more likely you're going to be asleep throughout the entirety of the night. So this is something that, once again, gets overlooked. It can be shortened. Every time you take one conscious diaphragmatic breath, you are creating more safety and control, and allowing you to be the person that you ultimately want to be. So there's it's just doesn't have to be big plans. It can be little ones. And once again, the more you do the breathing, just neurologically, you will put yourself in a much more improved state of awareness and possible growth.
All right. So have a great week. We will see you next. Let's talk about it Tuesday.